Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Coaches Corner University podcast. I'm your host, Paul O'Neid, and as usual, our podcast is brought to you by Coaches Corner University. You can use code podcast300 to save $300 off of our education collective with almost 200 hours of continuing education resources and discounts on our continuing education courses. We're also sponsored by TC Nutrition, Barefoot Shoes, and Bacon and Barbells. You can find discount codes in the description below if you want to support the podcast. Today, I'm joined by a good friend of mine, Ryan Taylor. Ryan is the owner of Dynamis Athletic. He's also an educator with the Exercise Mechanic, and he's someone who I've actually been enjoying getting to know a little bit more over the last couple of weeks. I had the pleasure of being on his podcast with his co-founder Etienne, and we had a great conversation. Ryan and I align on a lot of different things, and I'm very happy to have him here on the podcast. Welcome.
Yeah, man. Pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So maybe for the audience, and actually for me, like I know you started off as a personal trainer, but other than, being a personal trainer at a very high level and then transitioning to doing some online coaching as well and educating, I don't know much about your background. So give us a little bit of a Cole's notes of how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, I actually like kind of telling this story because I think it surprises people that don't know me from before. When I got into personal training, I think it was a shock to the entirety of my family. So I went through school, always played a lot of sports, and always did pretty well academically. So I think in my last year of grade 12, I had won 5 subject awards out of the 8 classes that I'd taken.
Nerd.
I'm a giant nerd. Like this whole thing is just a huge facade. I got a university calculus credit while I was in high school. More or less didn't pay a cent for my university, and I went in originally an undergrad degree of engineering physics.
Okay.
So for people that don't know, most engineering programs are pretty large, especially at like bigger universities. I went to Carleton University here in Ottawa. Within the engineering department, I think the engineering physics program, we had like 9 students, which for a large university is like a tiny program.
Yeah.
And very much loved math, loved sciences. And I made a very rational decision when I was entering university that I was like, this is how I get a job. This is how I make money. And within a couple of years, I felt really burnt out because I wasn't as heavily involved in athletics. And I knew I needed to get back into something like that. And I had always had this love for training. And, I literally like made my schedule work around the times I wanted to go to the gym when I was in university. And I had a moment in I believe it was my second year, I had this epiphany where I was like, if I keep doing this program, I'm either going to work in a lab or I'm going to work behind a desk for the rest of my life. And it sounds a little bit Hollywood, but literally I got up in the middle of class. I walked out. I went straight to student services. I switched all of my classes so that I would be able to apply to the Human Kinetics program at Ottawa U the following semester. Switched universities, got into the Human Kinetics program.
Great program. Go GGs.
Yeah. The irony is I actually hated going to Ottawa U, but that's another story.
Most people do.
Yeah. Started working as a personal trainer that winter, December of 2012, and had this idea where I was like, if I'm going to do this, if I'm going to take this kind of big leap and essentially disappoint everybody in my family who thought I was going to be a rocket scientist.
Yep.
I don't care that much about the money, but I need to do well enough to justify this decision.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think people have used the phrase more recently of like burn boats, but I essentially did that before really knowing what that meant. And I went all in when I was 20 years old as a personal trainer at Good Life. I was very, very lucky to have an excellent manager who was a great mentor, Jamie Wright,
Mm-hmm.
a really good team that was around me. And then essentially it's the only job that I've really ever had. And I've been at it ever since.
That's pretty cool. When did you leave Good Life?
I left the December of 2018,
Okay.
and I'll just say, like, it wasn't my last year or so there. I didn't have the best experience. And anybody who's worked in the corporate gym world, there are certain practices that people don't love.
Right.
And I was probably more outspoken than I should have been. I didn't leave on the best of terms. And at the time, I actually was not interested in working for another corporate gym. I got talked into going to Movati, which was one of Good Life's competitors. I got talked into going and applying to one of the gyms there, and I was very, very thankful that I did. Um, I was with Movati for 5 years, from essentially January of 2019 until September of 2023. So I guess almost 5 years,
Okay.
and had a great experience there. Um, Built a lot of really good relationships, and I think that got me reinvigorated, being like a full-time personal trainer. And a lot
Hmm.
of stuff that I'm doing now, I think uh, Movati allowed me to kind of use them as a stepping stone to get there. So, I was very grateful to have been talked into it and convinced to go there. Because otherwise, I think I'm not sure what I would have done. I would have been in the fitness world for sure, but it might have been a more challenging path, and I probably would have been more sour than I ended up being.
Well, one of the things that I think is worth discussing is the path from the commercial gym environment to private sector, like private sector being like entrepreneurship, because I think most people look at the corporate gym environment as, well, I'm just going to sell, sell, sell. And, I might not have the best opportunity to serve my clients, but there is a lot of carryover. And I think people miss the boat when it comes to leveraging that corporate gym's resources to elevate themselves as trainers. So, could you speak a little bit to how you yourself looked at this job as an opportunity to create a career for yourself?
Yeah, this is actually something I talk about a lot, especially I think as the online coaching world grows and grows and grows every year.
Yeah.
People have this almost like allergy to working in a corporate gym. And I'm one of the
Yeah.
biggest advocates for, if you are green in this industry, I think starting there is a great idea.
Hmm.
I worked in the corporate gym world for nearly 12 years. And I think what working there allowed for is the opportunity to really, really practice my craft on all levels,
Absolutely.
not just on the floor, but like whether you like it or not, if you have a service, you have to sell. And
Yeah.
maybe we can talk about approaches to selling, and I think convincing yourself. Like I never liked the idea of being a hard seller.
Me neither.
I think we might have talked about this in a previous chat, but this idea of providing solutions for people. But by kind of working out all the kinks in the corporate gym world, I was able to develop my own philosophies around sales, my own philosophies around business management. So I got to use all of these tools, excuse me, without paying a cent in marketing, without paying a cent in rent for a gym.
Hmm.
All of those things were provided for me. The Movati that I worked at, I believe we peaked at one point of having 9,000 unique members. There is
Oh
business
my
walking the door
God.
every fucking day.
Yeah.
So even if you strike out all the time, like I think if I remember the statistics, the closing rate on a consultation is like less than 10%.
Okay.
So it's terrible. Like it's not very
Yeah.
good. And there are so many people that even if you're terrible at sales, you'll luck your way into having a full roster of clients.
Well, if you look at even the math of that, 9,000 people, 10%, that's 900 people. There's
Mhm.
no way that you're going to have enough personal trainers to service 900 personal training clients.
Exactly. So I think the corporate gym world, for all of its warts and whatever else, even if you want to be an entrepreneur at some point in your life, which comes with its own host of headaches, you have an opportunity to practice all the elements of your craft.
Mm-hmm.
with the security of a corporation that is going to support you.
Yep.
You also get the opportunity to work within a team. I think that that's something that people don't consider sometimes. I was really, really lucky that I had earlier in my career a ton of really experienced trainers that worked around me that kind
Mm-hmm.
of took me under their wing. And as I got further into my career and was more experienced, I got to sort of pay it forward to younger trainers as well. So I got to be on the other side of it. And both of those experiences, I think, made me better. And the last thing that I'll add to that is, especially with the way that corporate gyms are structured now,
Mm-hmm.
back when I started, you didn't get paid a cent unless you had a client. Like,
Right.
I'm pretty sure my first paycheck with Good Life was $36 because I didn't have any
Bank.
clients. Yeah,
Making
I think I
bank.
ate ramen and ice cubes for like 2 weeks. And now they've got a lot better pay structure. They have education reimbursements, as well as many of these companies are realizing that education skills their trainers up, their sales improve. So it's a good business investment for those companies. So you have an opportunity, depending on which company that you work for and what their reimbursement strategy is, but you can not pay a cent out of your own pocket and take a couple of courses every single year to build yourself up as a trainer.
Yeah.
So you get to get better at your craft and learn from experts on somebody else's dime.
Yeah. I had this conversation with a young coach once who was like, man, I don't want to go work at a corporate gym. And I was like, okay, so if you look at the revenue split, if they're charging $125 an hour and they're paying you 40, okay, cool. Let's say it's a 30% revenue split. But then you're getting $2,000 a year in continuing education credits, and you're getting marketing, and you're getting leads, and you're getting all of these things. What's the real revenue split here? And
Yeah.
they're like, oh, I never looked at it like that. I'm like, of course you didn't, because you don't know how to calculate ROI and decision making. And so if you're coming to this green, you have no network to leverage. You have no, maybe you're, let's assume that you're not social media famous, right? How else are you going to get clients?
Yep.
And there's nothing to say that the network that you build while working at this corporate gym essentially gets severed when you leave. Absolutely not true. I'm sure when you separated yourself from the corporate gym environment, your first few clients were people that you previously coached.
Yeah, 100%. And I would add to that, I think you bring up a really good point of the networks that you develop within that corporate structure. You and I both know this. This is a people-driven industry.
Absolutely. Yep.
The relationships that you build with people probably matter more than anything else, with clients, with colleagues, so on and so forth. The relationships that I had built from Movati in particular also open up the door for the exercise mechanic that I teach for. We got contracts to teach, like bring our courses there because I knew the district manager, or sorry, the national manager of the company,
Mm-hmm.
because I knew him personally. The course that we brought out to BC, I knew the people who were ahead of their education department. So those relationships that I had built by just being in that world directly led to business for us on the education side of things. The other thing that I would add is, again, this being a people industry, word of mouth and reputation matters whether you want it to or not.
Absolutely.
Every single person, I don't care who you are, the first couple of clients that you ever work with, you are going to drop the fucking ball. I have
Yeah.
made so many mistakes. Like, I look back on old programs or just like things that I used to believe. The first diet I ever wrote somebody was horrific. Like, I would be embarrassed if somebody ever like pulled up my old logbooks. But I got to do that in a safe environment where
Mm-hmm.
now when I represent myself and that's it, I just don't make those same mistakes anymore. Or I'm at least confident navigating them in a way that I wouldn't have been 10 years ago.
Yeah. Let's circle back. You mentioned sales, because I think this is podcast is for coaches learning how to set up their businesses, whether they're collegiate strength coaches or whether they're private sector, commercial gym, whatever. We're all coaches and we all need to eventually sell our services. The framework that I've always operated within is, if I want to help people, I can't help them if they're not buying from me. So I've looked at sales as a service. I need to be able to sell this person on my coaching so that I can help them. What are some things that you think you learned early on in that corporate gym environment that you've been able to bring with you and build upon within your business?
Yeah, I think I view it the same way, to be honest. Um, I definitely always come at things from like a service perspective. And, I was never terribly financially motivated, which sounds kind of funny. I have to make a living at this. And don't get me wrong, I like being able to buy the stuff I want to buy,
Yeah.
but it was never sort of the main driver for me. And when it came to sales, and this is honestly still my approach now, I always thought of it as I'm just trying to solve a problem. I'm trying to help somebody.
Mm-hmm.
Whether they buy or not is not really up to me. The irony of this is if I try to solve their problems as much as I can in an hour or 2 hour period of time, and I've given them a lot. I think it's Gary Vaynerchuk talks about it's like give, ask.
Yep.
If I just over index on giving people stuff, they can find tons of information on the internet. Like Chat GPT now, you can type any question you want, and it's going to scour the internet and give you probably a more detailed answer than I can give you. So the thing that I can give you is attention, empathy, compassion, etc. A person that cares about you. And when you do that, most of the time, that's probably the thing that's going to sell people on you.
Mm-hmm.
And this is something I talk to people as well. Even if you want to have a business that you enjoy running yourself, the types of clients that you potentially attract when you hard sell people,
Yeah.
they're almost always the worst clients. They're always the people you're pulling teeth. Like, I shouldn't say always, very often, at least in my experience. And, some people that strategy works for them and maybe they have the tolerance for that. That's awesome. I'm not that guy. I'm definitely somebody where the interactions that I have with people have an effect on me.
Me too.
So if I'm just pulling teeth 8 hours a week with a couple of clients, I'm going to not enjoy my time. And it's going to make my job less fun.
Mm-hmm.
And those clients probably are not going to have quite as much success, which also reflects poorly on me as well.
Yep.
Whereas if I have clients where the sales approach that I've had with them is that of service, like you talked about, and then they're coming to me and approaching me because they genuinely want help from me,
Mm-hmm.
they're probably clients that are really invested. I'm probably going to have a fun time with them. My life is easier. They probably do a better job as well. So I think that the approaching sales from that perspective, in my eyes, is kind of a win-win for everybody.
Yeah.
And then the only thing I will add to that is, because all this sounds like flowers and daisies and whatever else, you still have to be able to navigate overcoming objections, financial conversations, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And that can still be done from a solution-based perspective. Like,
Absolutely.
this person really likes you, they want to do this thing, and their budget is tight. And then you're just helping them solve the financial issue of that and whatever happens to be the best, like strategy for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we align very closely on the values that we put forth, and the one thing I will add is that when you're trying to build a business as an entrepreneur, the main way in which you build a roster of clients as a coach is to never lose clients. So if you are consistently onboarding clients who we'll just use the term of low quality, because quality for me is investment in the process, commitment to their goals, is also financial buy-in. If you onboard clients who are of high quality, they're going to stay with you for a really long time. They're going to get better results, and then you'll be able to continue to build a roster. If you are bringing on clients that you either hard sell or you sell in like big bulk packages that you have to continue to renew, your churn rate is going to be a lot higher, which is why you see these clients or these coaches consistently needing to onboard all the time. I'm looking for 3 males, or I'm looking for 3 females, or I only have 3 spots open. No, you have lots of spots open because everyone leaves.
Yep.
And I see it. It's probably the mistake I see the most often with younger coaches is they think they need to be selling, 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 selling. But you hit on it. You need to be giving, 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 giving. And that comes to like people who aren't even in the door yet and haven't purchased with you. And then it extends even further to when people are actually paying you to provide the highest level of service possible so they never leave.
Yeah, I agree completely. And it's funny, even reflecting now where, I don't have sales targets other than paying my bills.
Yeah.
The clients that if I acquire clients now, I don't know how you feel. I'm terrible at being the center of attention. So like, uh, asking for business is like a weird thing for me.
Mhm.
It's a necessity, but it's a weird area for me to navigate sometimes.
Right.
I love getting business because people come to me because they think I'm helpful.
Yep.
So again, like that's where I put most of my effort. I would say the like 80 to 90% of the new clients that I get now were either a referral from somebody else that I did a good job with,
Hmm.
or somebody that like DM'd me on Instagram, asked me my opinion on something, I answered it. They asked me another question a week later, I answered it. And over a period of time, like I was this guy that answered their questions. And then they got to a state where, getting coaching or something was something that they were considering. I'm the first person they thought of because I'm the person that's already been helping them. And it's the
Yeah.
same thing, like, and not even approaching that, like, if I do this, this person's going to pay me. It's like, no, that like I've been a 22-year-old that had no fucking clue what I was doing before.
Yep.
And I wish that somebody had answered my questions. So I'll just do that. And if he buys, great. If not, whatever. It's a dude that I helped.
The way that I conceptualize this is like ripples in a pond. So like every single question that you answer, every helpful tip that you provide, every, resource that you create is just a pebble that you drop in the pond. And even, say that person, you answered all their questions. If they have a friend that's looking for a coach, who do you think that person's going to recommend? Oh man, you got to go talk to Ryan. He's been so helpful to me on Instagram. Okay, cool. Now you're getting a referral from someone who didn't even work with you, but who you were just helpful. And the hallmark of a healthy business for me when I look at coaches is the referral rate. So how many of your clients generate new clients? And for us, even though we have multiple ways in which we acquire clients, referrals will always be number one.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's going to allow us to continue to grow. Um, when we're talking about problem solving and when we're talking about promoting yourself outside of that corporate environment, what are some things that you try to focus on with regards to your own marketing strategy in presenting yourself to potential new clients in an online space? Because that is probably the thing that most of the coaches who approach me, they're like, how do I market myself online?
Yeah. It's funny you ask this because I feel like I might have one of the least structured and maybe least professional answers. So when I first started my online business, so I think I incorporated I want to say it was March of 2023. So I had social media, but I like posted some lifting videos and really just, sent memes to friends of mine. And that was about it.
Right.
And I recognized, this is kind of where eyeballs are at. I don't have Good Life or Movati to market for me anymore. So I have to invest in this. And as I said, like, I don't love being the center of attention. I'm very bad at, uh, this sounds like one of those, like, what's your biggest weakness in a job interview? Very bad at being inauthentic.
Mm.
If I am being scripted, it's so obvious. Like, it's not a good look for me. And, I didn't really have a ton of social media strategy initially. I followed other profiles and things that they did that I really liked. So had some more curated scripted material early, and it didn't do particularly well. And it took me a while to make a single post and know what I wanted to say because I think that it felt very inauthentic. And the irony was all of my marketing and social media not only did I see an improvement with engagement and everything else, but just the return that I got, because I don't have a massive following, but the percentage of people that follow, that engage with me and then, buy coaching got way better when I was in contest prep. And on one hand, it could be, yes, I'm posting pictures being a lot leaner, and we know that attracts people. But a lot of it was I was too fucking tired to make scripted, pretty Instagram stuff. And I just did stuff off the cuff. I have sort of a goofy sense of humor sometimes, a bit of a geek. And I just posted stuff like that, even just in stories without really thinking about it. And I got so much more engagement doing that. And I had this light bulb moment, which was that other strategy, I think, is a great strategy for people and it works for people, but it didn't work for me. And it reminds me of, I'm going to sort of tell a tangential story here.
Yeah, perfect.
I heard there was a podcast I listened to, I think it was Modern Wisdom. I forget who the guest was, but they were talking about, looking at role models for paths to success. And they used the example of the current era of men's professional tennis.
Okay.
So for people that don't know, like, tennis had this really unique period of time where undoubtedly the three greatest players to ever play men's tennis all played at the same time. So Djokovic, Nadal, and Federer are the only three male players to ever win 20 Grand Slam titles, and all three of them did. So, someone might look at Nadal practicing, and he's like shouting every shot that he hits. Everything's really aggressive. He's ripping his shoes up on the court. You go, okay, so if I want to be the best, I've got to be like that. I've got to be hyper aggressive. I've got to like take every single shot like it's my last. And then you look over at Djokovic, who is a tactician. He's very calm. Everything's very precise. Everything's measured. Completely different than Nadal. And then you look over at Federer, and he's laughing with people in the stands. He's hitting shots between his legs. He's got this just really free-flowing, like, beautiful game. And I think the important thing is none of those guys tried to be the other one. They went all in on who they are, and that's the thing that allowed them to succeed. So that's something, and I'll admit, like, I'm still figuring it out myself.
I think we all are.
But I think we all are, yeah. But that was a really big light bulb moment for me where, I think of, like, I'll use Kasim Hansen, for example.
Yep.
Really technical, really in-depth information on his page. I love it. Like, I love going through his stuff. I'm not as educated as him. I don't have access to the type of equipment that he does to do some of his studies. I think of, I'm friends with some of the people at RP, and then they've got Dr. Mike as sort of the face of their company. I'm not as witty, and I don't think I have quite the sense of humor that Mike does, so that wouldn't work for me. So I just go in on whatever is the most honest version of myself and post that online. Because I think when we look at what people are seeking from somebody online, if you're trying to hire an individual, you need to demonstrate competency. If you don't know what the fuck you're talking about, like, you've already failed the first test. So at the very least, you need to demonstrate competency. So I try to do that a little bit, and I'm a geek. I like that stuff. So I try to post some stuff that I think that is helpful to the people that follow me. After that, if you've demonstrated competency and people have just checked that box, they just want to see if your personality lines up with them.
Yeah.
And they're going to vet who you are before they ever reach out to you. And I'm probably not, like, we both know him. I think of Stu. Stu and I have opposite online personas. Stu is very abrasive. He tries to be contrarian. I know that's a strategy of his. And it works really fucking well for him. And the types of people that, like, want to be called a pussy by him and all of that stuff, it works great. And he attracts clients that work really great for him. I'm not that guy. And those people aren't going to come to me. And that's totally cool. But I will get the person that, like, wants to run their blood work every single month and understand everything that's in it. They want to have a conversation about mitochondrial support. They want movie recommendations. Like, I'm the geeky guy that people go to. So, and I think that's where, like, it works for both because people get an opportunity to know who you are online, and then you attract individuals that are drawn to your personality.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And the idea that ultimately people are going to want to work with you because of who you are, not what you know.
Yeah.
Um, if you demonstrate competency, you also demonstrate an ability to relate to people. People are going to relate to your story. They're going to relate to the way that you present information. They're going to relate to the successes that you share of the clients that you're currently working with. There's a whole number of things that you can do to kind of engender yourself to the audience. And the marketing term is nurture, right? So you get these eyes somehow, and then you nurture those eyes into somebody who is ready to blossom into a client that is going to be profitable for your business. But at the end of the day, it's just, hey man, do we mesh? And do you think I can solve your problem? The conversation about authenticity for me is a really important one because I've seen it all. I've seen the people that come into the industry guns a blazing with this massive marketing strategy, and then they're not there 2 years later, or they end up selling a whole bunch of something, swindling a bunch of people, and then leaving. And that's not the business I want to build. I'm similar to you in that, like, I don't love scripted content. I do know that speaking to a camera is something that I'm good at, so I leverage that a lot, and mostly because I spend 90% of my day on calls like this one, where I'm just speaking to a camera all day. So when I'm setting up in the gym, because I have a rule that every time I go to the gym, I have to film 2 pieces of content at minimum. I just think about something I'm doing that day or a question that I was asked, and I film a video on it, and then I send it away. I don't think twice. I'm probably the laziest content creator on the planet because I just refuse to invest time and energy into something that I don't typically enjoy doing. Um, I much prefer long form conversation. I much prefer, these types of conversations. But ultimately, social media is what's going to sell your coaching.
Yeah.
Aside from referrals, which you should be getting a healthy dose of, being able to present yourself online in a way that leverages your best assets in the best way possible, that's going to be what works. So you said, I'm not very good at scripting content. Some people are fantastic at scripting content. Some people can make things up off the cuff. Some people can you know make incredible infographics or carousel posts or reflective pieces that just resonate with people. But ultimately, the best way to like I have how to market yourself as an online coach is a question written here, and the best answer is be yourself.
Yeah.
Be
Yeah.
yourself, because everyone else is taken.
Yeah, exactly. And, it's probably a cliched saying, but I don't know how to be anybody else. And throw another cliche out there. You're always going to have people that like you and people that don't like you. So you may as well just be yourself. Because even if you pretend to be somebody else, there's going to be people that don't like your pretend version.
I don't know, man.
And
People love me. Everybody loves me, and
that's fair. Well, maybe not me.
that's not true. That's not true at all. There's a lot of people who don't like me, but to be fair, most of the people that don't like me, it's because they don't like hearing the truth, and I'm not one to sugarcoat things. And uh, actually, that's a great question. How do you blend the ability to present high level information in 60 to 90 seconds at the most?
It's a good question. I would say I'm terrible at it. I'm very good at doing it in 90 minutes, which is why I teach courses. Uh, I think the biggest thing is I feel like I'm a man of mantras. Uh, the phrase "don't lose the forest through the trees" is something that's really important to me. And if you understand where things fit in context, big picture wise,
Fantastic.
then
Mm-hmm.
you can describe whatever this, is that may be a smaller detail in a way that makes sense within that big context. So, I made a post. I don't think it was a post, as a story, and people always think this is goofy, but I think for people who are on the enhanced side of bodybuilding, something like Cialis is a really effective auxiliary to take, or ancillary, I should say. And besides the performance benefits that some people get, one of the biggest risks for male enhanced bodybuilders is just risk of health, like health degrades.
Mm-hmm.
If there is anything in play, Cialis in particular has been shown that it can reduce prostate size.
Mm-hmm.
It's a mild blood pressure drug. It's not very good at it, but that's a potential other benefit. But it's like, hey, here's this thing that could help in some way potentially manage the risk that is health when you're, on PEDs, which if you want to do this at a high level, you have to do it for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
So like that's the part that is important to me. Or if we're talking about any kind of nutritional strategy, I think it's Stan Effring that says the best diet is the one that you stick to. I don't give a shit if it's carnivore, keto, whatever it happens to be. What matters is, are you in a calorie deficit and can you adhere to whatever that diet is? That's the thing that matters.
Right.
So I think just being able to understand the big picture of any of these strategies or concepts or whatever it happens to be, and then just being able to communicate how it fits within that big picture is the part that's important.
Yeah, I've actually been playing with that sort of stuff a lot more in my posts, because what I'm finding is people like to find the gaps in what you're saying. But if you are broad enough in your comments, there are no gaps. So I posted a clip of a podcast that I did that went absolutely fucking crazy. The one where I was talking about if you gained a pound a month for 3 years. That post got like 170,000 likes.
Fuck. Okay.
I've never had any post go off like that. But what most people clung to was the fact that, oh no, your body would adjust to 100-calorie surplus. And my rebuttal was, well, if it's 100-calorie surplus, it's still 100-calorie surplus. Even if your maintenance changes, I never said that your maintenance wouldn't change. I said that you were in 100-calorie surplus. And people just couldn't wrap their heads around this. And then I just made another post kind of playing off of that. I was like, I wonder if I can keep doing this. And I said, a calorie is a calorie is a calorie. Because I know that a calorie is a unit of energy, and all calories are the same amount of energy that it takes to raise a gram of water by 1 degree Celsius. And so like, I know the deeper nuance. But if I say a calorie is a calorie is a calorie, I'm going to trigger a whole shit ton of people. And that post did very, very well. So that was the light bulb moment for me. And it's something that I've always thought about in the online space. What gets someone in the door doesn't have to be what keeps them in the room. And so if I can present something very simple that leads into a more nuanced conversation, whether that nuanced conversation happens in the comments, if it happens in the caption where I elaborate on my thought process, or it happens in the DMs when people message me angrily, I don't care as long as the conversations happen. Let's take this a step further, because I think we're getting into a great topic. You mentioned, enhanced bodybuilders. You mentioned, simple yet nuanced topics. That happy medium is where most of our clients are going to lie. They're going to lie. They're not necessarily competitive athletes. They're not, I don't like the term general population, but we'll use it. Anyone who's willing to invest a significant amount of money into their health and well-being, to me, is an athlete in some capacity. So the term that we like to use with Master Athletic Performance is we like to say they're lifestyle athletes. Their sport is life. And when we're talking about coaching lifestyle athletes that aren't necessarily, going to be stepping on stage, how do you find the happy medium between some nuanced, in-depth approach and something that's actually going to be sustainable for a long period of time for that person with, we'll call it less competitive endeavors?
Yeah, I think so. I'm just going to throw sayings at you every question.
Perfect.
There's another one that I always like. This is, I think, advice for trainers, especially as they are early in their career, or coaches as they're early in their career. Because I think everyone romanticizes having a roster full of, Mr. Olympia qualified bodybuilders.
That would be a fucking nightmare.
Honestly, I would hate it. But the saying that I always liked is like, moms and dads pay my bills.
Okay.
You will train, as you say, lifestyle, gem pop, whatever terminology you want to use. For most people, that's going to be the majority of the clients that you ever work with. So like learn, this is where, to answer your question, learn how people work. Because even your high level competitive bodybuilder, whatever, they're a human being under the skin. And I think if you understand how people work, if you know how to talk to them, if you know how to empathize with them, so on and so forth. To me, that is, when people talk about the art and the science of coaching, the science is, do you understand biomechanics? Do you understand nutrition? The art is the human part. And it's how can I deliver this in a way that is going to build trust with this person? It's going to build credibility. So, in turn, they trust what I'm saying. It's going to build confidence in them if that's what they need. Sometimes you got to like tough love people to bring them down. But I think actually being, and it's not, it's not disingenuous, but being strategic about how you talk to people matters. Being really intentional about the words that you use, and sometimes when you don't use them. So I think of an example. So I have a client who is now she's done a bikini show, but at the time she hadn't. The show that she did, which was her first show, I think the class size, she did 3 classes, were anywhere from 12 to I think 19 was the biggest class, and she came first in all of them.
Shit.
So she won all of them. So she did great. Like she's a good competitor. I think she's someone who will probably go far in the sport if that's what she chooses to do. And I remember we had a conversation maybe 2 months into prep. And this is something where, I guess to answer your question a little bit more, I actually think sustainability to some degree matters whether you're the lifestyle client or the competitor.
Without question, yeah.
Because you have to be able to stick to stuff. And same thing, you and I know this. I didn't get jacked in a year. I didn't get jacked in 5 years. This is a thing that you do for 10, 15, 20 years. Like that's,
I'm still not jacked.
Yeah. Same, man. It's that question about body dysmorphia we had before we got on camera. I lied to you. But yeah, so we had a conversation where, she's somebody who loves food. It's a very social thing. She's Korean. So a lot of family stuff around food, friend stuff, as much as I could, so long as the boxes were checked, especially very early on in prep. She'd never done a really structured, rigid diet before. Mm-hmm. This is a mistake I think that, coaches make sometimes. You have somebody that's never had a really, really rigid diet, and then you give them a diet plan that they cannot cheat on at all.
They're going to fail. Disaster.
Failure is a 100% chance that that's going to happen. So I want there to be some flexibility when it makes sense.
Yep.
And she pulled the Dave Tate, which was she had a free meal. And if she didn't stop eating, in her brain, it was all one meal. She just went like crazy overboard.
That's my vibe.
Yeah. She was like 116 pounds on stage, and like this girl can eat. It's crazy. Yeah. So she had messaged me. She told me what happened. And I remember having this moment where, yes, she's a competitor. She wants to get on stage. She wants to win. I want her to win. And she's a human being first. And this is a really critical conversation.
Absolutely.
I can, be very critical of what she did, tell her she did something wrong. She already probably feels shame. Mm-hmm. She knows that meal, 3 meals crammed into one, was not conducive to getting in the shape she needs to get on stage. She's not stupid. Mm-hmm. What I needed to do was not only have a conversation, just to make that clear, because I don't want there to be any misinterpretation about what the end goal was, but also to be really empathetic with her. Be like, look, like I've been there. Everyone's been there. It's not a big deal. Because in my eyes, the worst thing that I could do, I think of this almost like parenting. Yeah. Really strict parents don't raise obedient children. They raise liars. Mm-hmm. So if I'm just an asshole to her, she's not going to miraculously become a better client. She is going to feel like I broke her trust. I'm not going to feel like a safe place for her to be honest anymore. And the only thing that I have in this coaching relationship, the entire foundation of that, is that my clients trust me and they feel safe to be honest with me.
Yeah.
So what mattered was being a human being in that moment. So it's a very long answer to your question.
No, it's perfect.
So where I'm going with this is, regardless of if they're lifestyle or a competitor in whatever the avenue happens to be, I always just think that they're a human being underneath. And then the degrees of how rigid things are or whatever things that I deploy are just context specific.
Yeah. And that's truthfully the answer that I was hoping that you would give. Because I think a lot of people, especially, we've kind of framed this whole conversation around that younger coach who's trying to level up.
Yeah.
You learn as much as you can, and then you start trying to apply these very high level concepts with people with whom they're probably not appropriate. You go through J3 University, which is a phenomenal course that John put together. And then all of a sudden, all of your clients are following these like massive check-in sheets with, daily readiness questionnaires and taking their fasted blood glucose. It's like, Cindy Soccer Mom doesn't need to be doing her fasted blood glucose 3 times a week.
Yeah.
Could it potentially be beneficial? Maybe. But I'm sure the fact that she's having 7 glasses of wine a week, probably where you need to start off your intervention. So, the fact that you answered that with like a real world example is perfect. I have actually a client email in my inbox right now that I haven't had the opportunity to sit down and give the attention it deserves. I have a client who been dealing with some eating disorder behavior in the past, like we're talking 30 plus years of eating disorder behavior, was provided with a GLP-1 from her doctor. And we had agreed together that she was going to abstain from its use until we started establishing some of the habits that would be required, so that when she did decide that she was ready to use it, we could further work on those habits. She's going through a very stressful time in her life right now. And while I was on vacation, decided to start the drug. I could message her back, be like, what the fuck? Fuck you. Just come down on her. My response was actually, when she sent that to me, my follow-up response was, hey, before we jump into this, I just want to ask you 2 questions. Number 1, do you think that we achieved the benchmarks that we set forward together before you wanted to start using it? Just had a look at your journey in our app, and it looks like you haven't been doing the questionnaires on a daily basis, only a handful of times in the last couple of weeks. And we know that these drugs have side effects, and it's important that we're journaling to make sure that we're keeping track of things. And then number 2, did you decide to use it because you felt you were ready, or did you decide to use it because it was an element of your life you could control during a time where you feel chaotic? And I always will say this with my clients, especially when I'm asking very hard questions. Please remember, these are reflective questions. I'm not here to judge you. I'm here to stand by your side.
Yeah.
She sent me the next email was like super long, and that's the one that's waiting in my inbox. And I know that for me, that was an opportunity in the same way it was for your client with her cheat meals. That's an opportunity for me to show my client that I'm actually holding her hand and standing beside her, as opposed to behind her, kicking her in the back.
Yeah.
And that art of coaching is so, so important. And I want to ask you, like, within that, continuing to frame this from a young coach, where did you learn that?
Oof, that's a great question. I think, so actually, I will use this as an opportunity to tell a story of when I was very bad at it.
Okay.
My very first consult I ever did, because I was really gung-ho, I wanted to show that I was ready to work. I did a 6 a.m. consult. Like, as soon as my manager was like, you're ready, you can do this. 20 years old, have kind of no life experience at that point. Had a mid-40s single mom. 15 minutes or so into this conversation, because I'm just following the Good Life script of like emotional interviewing. And she is sobbing. at this
Jesus.
table. Because like nobody has asked her how she feels in 10 years. I have no capacity. Like I have no, emotional skills to handle this. I just stared at her while she cried. She did not buy training. It was a disaster of a consult.
I just stared at her while she cried.
I didn't know what to say. I was like, I've never dealt with this before.
Man. Yeah.
So I think that the reason why I tell that is you will be bad at it initially, especially if you're, as young as I was when you started. Because I think that one of the really important parts about this is just having life experience.
Yeah.
At this stage of my life, and I'm pretty candid about a lot of things, so I don't mind sharing this. Like, I spent pretty much from the time I was 18 or 19 until now, I've like dealt with depression, like my entire adult life, and all of the ups and downs that come with that. I've gone through a divorce. I've had shit happen. People have had way worse things happen than I've had.
It's not a competition. It's not a trauma competition.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, there's a phrase I like, which is you can drown in an ocean and a puddle just the same.
Oh, so good one.
People's trauma, the worst thing that's ever happened to you is the worst thing that's ever happened to you.
Yeah.
Right. But the reason why I share that is I've just had shit happen, which now if somebody comes to me and it's like, hey, like my husband left me and I'm blah, 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 blah. I can actually relate to them and I can talk to them like a person. And I've just had, I posted this the other day. It made me feel really old. I've done over 20,000 one-on-one client hours now in my life. I've just had a shitload of conversations with human beings. And I've made mistakes. And I've had times where I've said the wrong thing, or I should have said something and I didn't. But it's just practice. It's like reps in the gym, right? I think that those conversational and emotional skills are exactly that. They are skills that can be practiced. On top of that, they're also skills that can be studied. So it's not just about, being in the trenches and working on it. And I think you have to.
I think you have to as well.
Yeah, I think you do. I mean, that was one of the reasons why I started taking a select few one-on-one clients again, because I spent about a year where I had none. And I was like, I'm really bad at making small talk with people because I'm just working by myself in my house. And part of that was I wanted to ensure that I still had some of those skills to be able to just, relate to people in a way that's really quick. You would know this when you talk with clients. You learn really fast the things that they're interested in talking about. And you're like, I can figure out how to talk about that.
Yep.
Oh, you like football? I can figure out how to talk about that. You like movies? I can figure out how to talk about that. I've watched fucking, what is it? Love is Blind. Sure. I'll talk about that with you.
Oh, Jesus.
It's terrible, but you find out those are skills to be able to identify that and then make conversation. Like I had a client who was a massive video game streamer guy. And I was never super into video games. My brother was. And I knew just enough just to ask him so that he would talk about it. I had zero back and forth with him because I didn't know anything about the games, but I could ask him stuff and he got to talk about it. I'm sure not a lot of people liked listening to him nerd out about his video games. And that was an opportunity where, this is something, if you just work with clients long enough, you're going to talk about all this stuff with them. He had an opportunity to just feel like somebody was listening to him, and that mattered. Something that I do, the reason why I have all these, phrases and mantras that I say is I do pay attention to, experts and things that they will say about communication and psychology and so on and so forth. One of a book that I found really powerful, I think it's specifically for romantic relationships, but I think it was really helpful. There's a book called Mating in Captivity by Esther Perel. If you are, so if you're familiar with her, first of all, that woman is the sexiest woman I've ever seen in my life, and she's like 60 something. But the way that she would talk about just human interaction and learning to appreciate people from afar, all of these types of things, you can learn skills in a very theoretical sense, and then practice them on the floor with clients in the exact same way that you would with like biomechanics and anatomy.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love that you mentioned the experience portion. I actually tried to sit down a while ago and think about like how many hours I spent on a gym floor with people because like, you know,
It's going to make me feel uncomfortable. It's a lot.
well, even just the fact that like, okay, so I worked with 500 student athletes a year for 5 years and I saw them in the weight room 3 times a week. So even then, it's like 500 times 5, you're at 2,500 kids plus
Yep.
all the people that I've coached along the way. It's like at some point you just realize like, yeah, I've just done it a lot for a really long time. And that's how you get good at anything.
Yep.
Um, I remember a conversation very, very vividly that I had with one of my first, the probably the coach that had that biggest impact on me. His name's Todd Hammer. He's the head strength coach at Robert Morris University. And I sat down. I was like, dude, none of these kids give a fuck what I'm telling them. And he's like, yeah, it's because you don't care. I'm like, what? I care so much. Look how much effort I'm putting in. I can write the best programs. I can, I know exactly how their exercise is supposed to be performed, blah, blah, blah. He's like, yeah, but you don't care about them as people and they know it. And he was so blunt with it. And I took that as an affront and I was like, okay, I need to learn more about people. I need to stop reading Verkhoshansky and Medvedev and all these like, Eastern European sports performance scientists and start learning about psychology. So I started reading about cognitive behavioral therapy. I started reading about motivational interviewing. I started reading about, different sorts of strategies to relate to people. And it wasn't until I actually learned how to have conversations with people that I got real results.
Yeah.
And like that simple conversation was one that, completely changed the game for me. And having the opportunity to work in the insurance world and disability rehab. I think we talked about that a little bit on your
Yeah.
podcast. Um, you know, learning how to talk to different types of people in different ways. The other thing that I will say is I think a lot of young coaches, especially if they are competitive, like so if they compete, they expect themselves from other people. And that is
Yeah.
something that you absolutely cannot do. If I was to expect the same level of stoicism, pragmatism from others as I do from myself, I think I would be really, really bored as a coach. But I also would be just so disappointed all the time because people are very emotional beings, and I am, you know, in the same way as you. Like I've had a lot of life experience, and so I am a very emotional person, but I manage my emotions very well and I process them very quickly now. Thank you, therapy. Um,
Everybody should go to therapy, I
Everybody
think.
should go to therapy. It's the best. Um, but until I started reading about it and actually applying the strategies that I was reading about in real time, and I think an aspect that we haven't touched on that I think is worth mentioning is if you are a coach, you need to be coachable. And the only way to know if you're coachable is to work with the other coaches. And
Yeah.
that and not just one. I think you should work with as many coaches as you can to try to learn
Mhm.
from them, try to learn about what makes them special, what works for you, what doesn't work for you, so that you can adapt your processes within your own framework to the people that you're working with, because excellence leaves clues, right? And I hope that every coach that I work with as a client, because at this point in my career, a lot of my clients are coaches, which is great for me because I love the
Yeah, me
education
too.
part. But I would hope that by working with me, they become better coaches. And I think that was an area where I missed out on a little bit early in my career because I self coached for the majority of my competitive career. And it wasn't until I started getting coached by other coaches that I really felt that my own coaching took off. I think
Yeah.
that was super beneficial. I want to talk about the foray into education because I think
Mm.
it's one where maybe I'm a little bit old school in this, but I think you got to pay your dues, right? So
100%.
it wasn't until you had a decade of coaching under your belt that you felt comfortable coaching other coaches.
Yeah.
Was there an element of imposter syndrome when you started teaching?
I think there still is, to be honest with you.
Fair.
It's not, I guess, not public knowledge at this point, but I'm supposed to be speaking at the Activate conference this year. And I will fully admit, I am terrified of making an absolute ass out of myself. And something that because I think it's a 90-minute time slot. It's a little bit different than teaching a course where there is some interaction when you're teaching a course and a student might ask a question. It's 90 minutes of lecture.
Yeah, it's a lot. That's a big
It's a lot. It's a lot of content. I'm like, do I literally know anything enough to talk that much? Has been a thing in my head, which is hilarious because I'm sure I will come up with some. I mean, I know what I'm going to talk about, but yeah, I think that level of imposter syndrome exists for me constantly. And with that being said, I think that there could be a positive manifestation of that, which is I'm sure as shit I'm not going to be unprepared, I should say.
Yeah.
I might make an ass of myself still, but it won't be because I didn't prepare. And, to talking about getting to a place where I felt comfortable being an educator, it was very important to me. We talk about service again. It is still an element of service. I needed to feel, and I needed there to be very clear indications that I had something to say that was valuable. And until that was the case, I certainly wouldn't have put myself in a position where I was charging money, teaching people things that I thought was a waste of their time.
Mm-hmm.
So not only, I have, by the time I was teaching formally now, over 11 years in the industry, tons of client hours. And I would say, not to pat myself on the back, but was recognized as a trainer that did a good job as well. On top of, I probably spent in the first 10 years of my career, I would say it's between $60,000 to $80,000 on courses. I took courses, tons of courses every year. And this is pre the education reimbursement that a lot of these companies had. A lot of my paycheck went into courses I was interested in attending.
Mm-hmm.
So I at least felt confident that I had enough to say that was valuable to a certain audience. And even then, every course that we have taught, we have gone back and modified the course, discovered what worked, what didn't work. It's still not something that I take for granted.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that it's perfect. I don't think that I've nailed it yet. It's gotten better every single time. There's always this way of figuring out, what content fits, what needs to be dropped. Time is unfortunately a huge boundary when it comes to these courses.
Yeah.
You'd be shocked at how little 20 hours is when it comes to teaching. There is so much content that we end up omitting from the courses that we have because we want it to make sense logically. We talk about not missing the forest through the trees, what's relevant for the majority of trainers that are taking our courses. It's one of the reasons why we're going to write a level 2 course for the Hypertrophy Intensive, which has sort of become my baby. We're going to write a level 2 for the trainers that are interested in more in-depth stuff that we just never have an opportunity to touch on in the courses that we currently are teaching. But yeah, I had imposter syndrome before I started. I have imposter syndrome as I'm doing it now. And as a means of not only delivering value to the students, but honestly, being able to sleep comfortably at night and not feel like a complete fucking asshole, I make sure that I know as much of what I'm talking about as I can.
Right.
So yeah, that's the biggest thing. I don't think, I don't have a PhD. There are many people in the things that I know the best, they know way more than me.
Mm-hmm.
That's just the reality. And I still think that I can deliver something that is of value to people because I know things enough. And have you read the book Blink by Malcolm Gladwell?
Yep.
So he talks about this idea of thin slicing. I can thin slice personal training because I've just seen it so many times. I can just look at something and be like, this fits, this doesn't fit. Because I've just been on the floor for so many hours. And when you've got trainers that have done 20 hours of PT total, they don't have the ability to do that. So to learn from someone that I can decide if something's important or not in a half a second, just because I've seen it so many times, which I'm sure you like feel the same way. You can figure out really quick the decisions that you want to make with a client because you've just seen tons of shit.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is a valuable thing that you can bring to other coaches and other trainers if they want to learn from you.
Well, I think when it comes to education, I think we see it all the time. Is like, I can say a million things a million different ways, but as soon as it's said in your voice, it might be resonated with a little bit better.
Yeah.
And I also see the value in just educating from a position of giving people as many opportunities to learn as possible. So even if your hypertrophy intensive is, okay, let's be honest, you're probably not presenting any new information.
No.
None of us are. But the way in which you present it is going to resonate differently with different people. And as long as the information is conceptually correct, what's the harm?
Yeah.
Right. And I love that you mentioned using that imposter syndrome as a tool to be better prepared. Because I think when most people are like, oh man, I feel like such an imposter. Yeah, you probably are. You probably have no fucking clue what you're talking about, and you're probably dramatically unprepared. But if you use that and you say, okay, I'm going to prepare the fuck out of this, you might not be fully confident in what you're presenting initially. But as you present it more often, as you refine the approach, as you get feedback, as you continue to make iterations, now you get more and more and more confident. And it's the same process for everything. The first time you stepped in a weight room, you probably felt, intimidated. You felt like you didn't belong there.
I got pinned by a 65-pound bench the first time I ever worked out.
The first time
Stapled.
I have a moment like that. So one of my great friends and one of my mentors as an athlete, Jay Nira, was when I first started training, he was one of the best in the world. And I remember squatting at the Maryville YMCA and getting pinned under a 315 squat. And he walked up behind me, picked it up over my head and put it back in the rack. And I was like, okay, well, I guess I got to work a little bit harder. And then I like to remind Jay that I out-totaled him before I was done competing. So,
Nice.
All right. I have a couple of quick hit questions to finish off our podcast. The first is, what book are you currently reading and what book are you reading next?
So I do actually have a book. I think it's called Burn Boats. I wish I could tell you the author. I'm terrible with names. And I would be lying if I said that I'm quick with reading. I'm kind of weird. Like I love watching stuff and I love reading. I like reading like medical journals and science. Like I'm a geek with that stuff. I love reading research that's out there.
Okay.
And it takes me a while to sit down with a book because I have to be in the right headspace. I do think social media has like fostered ADHD in me. So that is the book that I've been slowly picking away at. It was probably more relevant a year ago when I first was really getting into entrepreneurship. Next book, oof. Boy, I don't know. That's a good question. I got to get through the first one.
That's all good, man. I think the fact that you're reading a book called, Jordan Shallow has a tattoo that says "Burn Boats."
Yeah.
You know that the
his
B,
knuckles.
Yeah, you know that the B is on his thumb. So if he puts his knuckles together, it says "Burn Oats."
Yep.
And I always like to make fun of him because he can't cook breakfast. The next question I have is, what has been the most impactful decision that you've made as a coach for yourself, like for your business?
Oof. Taking the RTS program in 2000, might have been 2016. So RTS is a program called the Resistance Training Specialist. For people that don't know, so Tom Purvis runs RTS. I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that Tom Purvis is the godfather of biomechanics in the fitness world. Everybody who teaches it now, Kasim Hansen, Joe Bennett, Jordan Shallow, Ben Pekulski, every single one of them learn from RTS.
Mm-hmm.
It is the foundational course when it comes to biomechanics. It completely flipped my training philosophy on its head. And it also, that was kind of the time that myself and Etienne started to link up because he was an instructor for them. And not only, that relationship has fostered itself into a really cool business relationship that we have and a good friendship that we have, but it completely changed how I looked at exercise. And everything that I took afterwards, I sort of filtered through that lens. And I think that it made me a better practitioner.
I love that. Whenever I can have like something super actionable for the audience, it's like super valuable. So thank you for that. The last question, if there's one person that you would like to see me interview on the podcast, who would it be? With the caveat that you have to help me get them on.
Oh, shit. Okay, so we just, we're working on booking, but we got a yes from Dean St. Mart, I think his last name is. He's on the Anabolic Roundtable.
Yep.
Because I've been really, really interested in a lot of this like mitochondrial support conversation. So that has been something I've been really fascinated in. So the guy actually I would love to get on or see somebody else interview is Kurt Havens.
Oh, okay. I could definitely, I think I could get him on.
I figured you might.
You know who you should have on your podcast is Anthony Castor.
The name rings a bell, but I can't.
He was on my podcast. He is a fellow with the peptide. So there's a governing body of peptides worldwide, and he's a fellow with them. The dude is a wealth of information on peptides.
Okay.
Yeah, very, very cool guest.
It's definitely an area
I can do an intro.
Fascinated by. Yeah, I'd appreciate it.
All right. Dude, thank you.
I will add one other answer to that, actually.
Okay.
I believe, is his first name Alex? It's Dr. Cobb, who runs Z Health. If you're familiar with them.
I'm not.
So Z Health, also a remarkable program for people to go through. It's not cheap, which none of these great programs are. I believe his background might have been as a chiropractor, but I could be wrong. But Z Health really just dives into neuroscience. And that was kind of back to your earlier question, to a lesser degree than RTS, but there was some alignment in philosophy here. But Z Health really, really, really opened my eyes to this idea of the body really just being this like input, interpretation, output system. This idea of like pain being a response that your body has. It's not like it in and of itself isn't really anything. It's your body's way of protecting itself against a perceived threat, etc. Mm-hmm. Z Health is a really, really cool program. Again, if you work with clients that are in pain, which all of us will at some point, I think it's something that's worth checking out. And he's just like, I think he's in his mid 50s or mid 60s, cool as a cucumber, seems like a really down to earth, very intelligent man. And I've almost never seen him interviewed.
Cool. Well, I'll see if I can do that. Dude, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you and getting to know you over the last couple of months, and really looking forward to, our friendship moving forward. If there was one thing that you would like to see on a billboard or a message for the audience as a parting word of wisdom, what would it be?
Give a shit.
That's a common one. I love it. Thank you so much. I'll have links to where everyone can find you in the show notes. Thank you everyone for listening. Please make sure to like, share, subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, and we'll catch you on the next one. Thanks, Ryan.
Cheers.